This ID expired in 2012. Your retirement card, old man? The security officer burst into laughter. He held aloft the faded military ID like a war trophy, his eyes brimming with derision. The crowd at the Riverside County DMV tittered along. No one suspected they were about to witness a moment that would change everything. The elderly gentleman, his hair silver and his bearing composed, uttered not a word. He simply retreated to a bench in the corner. Then, with a discreet call on his flip phone, he stunned the entire room. That number did not connect to family or friends. It rang directly to a red line at the Pentagon. In the blink of an eye, the mocking smiles vanished. In their place came profound respect. Some cards may expire on paper, but the authority and sacrifice they represent endure forever. Who is this man? And why does an old card wield the power to shake the gears of a nation? Join us as we uncover the story of a living legend, where respect is not merely granted, but carved into history. Before we begin this extraordinary tale, if you love inspiring storytelling, hidden truths, and characters once forgotten, hit subscribe now. On Tuesday morning at the Riverside County DMV, the scene played out like a familiar drama, a tableau of prolonged waiting, interwoven with the quiet disappointment of people packed into a cramped space. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered incessantly, artificial and cold. They blinked in waves, as if testing the last of everyone's patience. The familiar voice rang out at steady intervals. Q128, window number 4. Next customer, please. The electronic announcement echoed through the room, mingling with heavy sighs and scattered footsteps. The atmosphere felt like a pressure cooker. People sat shoulder to shoulder on long benches, each face etched with fatigue. A few mothers tried to soothe their children, little ones wailing from being held too long. Young adults stared at their phones, swiping screens to make time pass more quickly. Workers in high-vis vests, sweat still darkening their backs, glanced at their watches. Each second slipping by meant another precious minute of lunch break lost. Amid the cacophony and weariness, an elderly man approached window number 6. He walked slowly, each step deliberate and measured. His pace was unhurried, yet he carried an unshakable steadiness. He wore a deep navy jacket, tailored to a frame that had inevitably thinned with the years. His silver hair was neatly combed, every strand in place. His khaki trousers bore a crisp crease, sharp as if pressed that very morning. His dark leather shoes, though well worn, gleamed where they had been carefully polished. His right hand trembled ever so slightly, a small sign of time's passage, or perhaps the echo of experiences none here could fathom. Yet his back remained straight, his shoulders firm, his gaze unwaveringly forward, as though his military bearing had never left him. He paused before window 6, rested his hand gently on the counter, and spoke in a warm, clear tone. "Good morning. I need to renew my identification." Behind the counter sat Emily Harper, a new hire, only a few months in the role. The young woman fought to stay alert during a long, tiring shift. She yawned, covering her mouth while her eyes barely left the computer screen. In a flat, indifferent voice, she asked, "Driver's license or state ID?" The man did not answer immediately. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small, weathered card. He placed it on the counter with a motion both slow and decisive. This was neither a driver's license nor a standard ID card. It was a military identification, pale blue with frayed edges, corners worn smooth by time. Strange symbols adorned its surface, unfamiliar to Emily. No modern barcode, no fresh color photograph, only an official insignia and a line of solemn text. It was nothing like the documents Emily processed every day. She froze. Her half-formed yawn died in her throat. She leaned in to study the card again, her eyes betraying hesitation. For a brief moment, the world around the transaction window fell quieter than the rest of the room. The man stood silently, saying nothing further. He showed no impatience, no urge to hurry. His posture remained erect, his hands lightly clasped before him. He was accustomed to waiting, but not the restless, irritated kind. Rather a composed patience, born of having faced far harsher trials. Emily glanced up at him once more, then returned to her screen, fingers fumbling at the keyboard as she searched for guidance. She knew at once this was not the usual document her system handled. She needed to verify the procedure. Yet in her mind persisted only the image of that worn card, and the man who carried himself with unwavering dignity, as if age had never slowed him. Emily lowered her head, focusing on the card the man had just placed on the counter. Her brow knit slightly as she read the faded ink. She cast a glance at the expiration date, lips pressing together. "Sir, this expired back in 2012, she said evenly. Yet the weariness of a clerk all too familiar with out-of-procedure cases crept into her tone. A long shift and endless routine had left her little patience for the unusual. The man nodded, betraying nothing but calm. "I'm here to renew it," he replied. His answer was brief, with no further explanation. His voice was soft yet clear. He clearly knew all about waiting for others to process his paperwork. Emily studied him for a moment, then exhaled. Her fingers froze on the keyboard. She had never encountered this before. The protocol for renewing a nearly 10-year expired military ID wasn't in her training. The card's codes, its design and layout were unlike anything she'd seen. Part of her felt unsettled. Another part simply wanted to handle it quickly and return to familiar forms. She raised a hand, signaling for the morning shift supervisor, Miguel Torres. A middle-aged man with nearly 12 years at the DMV, he always wore a stern expression, as if perpetually managing a crisis. Miguel approached, glanced at the card on the counter, and a flicker of doubt crossed his face. He bent closer to inspect it, then furrowed his brow and nodded slightly. Unsure of its authenticity, he motioned to the security officer standing nearby. Ryan Bennett was on duty that day. At 28, tall and muscular, he wore his security uniform with creases so sharp they could cut paper. Since joining, Ryan had relished the authority of overseeing his assigned area. Whenever an older person veered from protocol or presented invalid documents, Ryan was the first to step forward with a scrutinizing gaze and a smug grin. He strode to window 6, brimming with self-satisfaction, and casually grabbed the card. He flipped it over a few times, then burst into laughter. "What is this?" Ryan laughed loudly. "Looks like a toy card from a cereal box. Or your retirement card, old man?" Soft laughter rippled from the nearby benches. A few waiting patrons turned to watch, amused by the unexpected spectacle. A young clerk at the next window glanced over and quipped half-jokingly, "Bet he printed it at home and brought it in." The lobby suddenly buzzed louder, and though no one laughed outright or objected, the ridicule hung heavy in the air. Ryan, still holding the card, smirked. "Try the Veterans Affairs office with this, friend. Doesn't look official at all." He flung the card back toward the man as if discarding something trivial. The plastic slithered across the counter before coming to rest at the edge. The man did not react. No anger, no retort. He simply stepped forward, picked up the card with both hands, handling it with care and reverence as though it were sacred. Then he slid it into his inner jacket pocket, closest to his heart. No complaint, no defiance, Just a polite nod to Emily, the sole observer at the counter, and he turned quietly, leaving window 6. He walked slowly toward the long bench in the corner where few sat. Each step seemed guided by journeys that required no applause. The air around him felt heavier, in stark contrast to the chaos behind him. He seated himself on the wooden bench, hands resting on his thighs, gaze distant as if recalling another time. No one knew who he was. No one cared to ask. To them, he was just another old man with a strange card and an unconventional request. But to him, Colonel James Whitaker, this was not the first time he'd faced skeptical eyes, nor was it the first time he'd been deemed obsolete by the current system. He had lived long enough to know that true worth lay not in fleeting recognition, but in maintaining one's dignity in silence, even when pride is tested in public. And so he sat there, amid the DMV's noise and disorder, as a silent emblem of an older generation, resilient, composed, and requiring no understanding. Seated quietly on a silver-gray plastic bench, apart from the commotion in the waiting room, Colonel James Whitaker maintained his calm as if never insulted. He leaned gently against the wall. His hands rested on his knees. His gaze betrayed no emotion. Nothing on his face showed any reaction to the chuckles or the jests aimed at him only minutes before. From his inner jacket pocket, he withdrew an old flip phone, its plastic casing lightly worn at the edges. Alongside it, he pulled out a small, yellowed slip of paper. On that paper was a 12-character code written in deep blue ink. No name, no area code, not a single annotation beyond the precise characters, as though transcribed from memory rather than any database. He had kept that sequence for 3 decades and never used it. Until today. With the precision of a habit ingrained in his very marrow, he punched each number into the tiny keyboard. His fingers neither trembled nor hesitated. Every press was familiar, like entering an old command code in days when every decision demanded absolute accuracy. The phone rang once, then came a soft click, a sound that pierced the noisy air, like an invisible door opening. "Pentagon Secure Line," a female voice announced, crisp and articulate, neutral and professional to the point of icy detachment, no regional accent, no hint of emotion. A voice trained to reveal nothing. Whitaker lifted the slip and read the second sequence, 6 digits, then 4 letters, in a steady, clear tone, neither rushed nor drawn out. No hesitation, no repetition. The voice on the other end did not ask for confirmation. No name check, no PIN request, no questions at all. "Transferring the call. Please hold," came the curt reply, immediately followed by the familiar beeps of a transfer, then silence. Whitaker closed the phone without another word. He carefully tucked it into his chest pocket, alongside the faded military ID from moments before. He returned to his original posture, silent, his eyes sweeping the room once more, not focusing on anyone in particular, merely scanning as one accustomed to observing in silence. Across the room, laughter still lingered. At window 6, young security officer Ryan Bennett recounted the incident with visible delight. Each time he mentioned the old man with the fake card, he laughed uproariously, his triumphant grin as though he'd just executed a masterstroke. "Looks like a toy card, probably printed at home." His voice carried through the lobby, prompting others to chuckle. A passerby even glanced toward Whitaker with curiosity, then quickly looked away. Whitaker showed no sign of noticing. Meanwhile, Emily, who now had a free moment at the counter, pulled out her phone. She opened Reddit and typed swiftly. "Saw an old guy at the DMV with an expired military ID from who knows when, obviously fake, printed at home. Security officer schooled him good. She attached a photo showing the pale blue card on the counter, careful not to reveal the man's face. The image, though hastily taken, captured the worn edges and faded printing clearly. It served as proof for the budding story. Within minutes, the post began garnering likes and comments. Classic. Old guys think their rank is a lifetime perk. It's the DMV. Anything can happen. I saw that card at a cosplay event last year. Those first reactions were mere sparks, yet they were setting Tinder ablaze. Emily had no inkling that, minutes later, those seemingly harmless lines would spread far faster than she imagined. What Ryan, Emily, and the others didn't realize was that a storm was forming, not one of wind and rain, but a silent storm, a chain reaction triggered by an old flip phone, a 30-year-old code, and a neutral voice on the other end of the line. Somewhere, at the far end of that connection, a system long dormant began to stir. And while Riverside DMV patrons remained absorbed in laughter, ridicule, and Reddit notifications, they had no idea that the clock had started its countdown, and that everything was about to change. 10 minutes passed in an atmosphere heavy as lead. The earlier laughter at Window 6 had died away, and though no one spoke it aloud, a subtle shift had taken hold of the DMV waiting room. Colonel James Whitaker remained seated, silent and motionless, like a sculpted statue amid the trivial movements around him. In the back office, normally reserved for internal calls or those from local administration, a seldom-used landline telephone suddenly rang. It was the special line few employees even knew existed, intended only for extraordinary circumstances. Regional Manager Karen Sullivan, busy processing personnel files, looked up in surprise at the unfamiliar ring. She rose and lifted the receiver. Her opening words went unheard, but within seconds, her expression changed markedly. She straightened, her voice adopting a solemn tone. The call lasted exactly 3 minutes and 17 seconds, no more, no less. When she replaced the handset, Karen stood motionless for a few seconds, as though weighing something immense. Then she strode from the office, her heels clicking decisively on the tile floor. Her face was flushed, whether from anger or tension was unclear. Her hands clenched, each purposeful step driving her toward an urgent destination. The reception area fell silent as Karen appeared. Whispered conversations died down. Even the regular electronic chimes seemed stilled by the strange tension filling the room. It was as if everyone sensed something was about to happen. Karen spoke to no one else. She marched straight to the security desk where Ryan Bennett still leaned casually against the wall, smug satisfaction lingering in his eyes. Pointing directly at him, her voice rang out, firm, not shouted, but sharp enough to slice through the thick air. You, and you, Emily, into my office, now! No one in the room dared speak. Ryan froze, brow furrowing in surprise, yet he did not dare protest. Emily, fingers paused at her keyboard, looked up, her face paling in an instant. They exchanged a glance, then rose and silently followed Karen toward the security office door, which closed behind them, separating them from the curious stares of the waiting crowd. At that moment, a sleek black SUV, bearing government plates rather than a standard tag, pulled up at the DMV's main entrance. No siren, no rush, yet its presence drew several heads in the queue. The door opened. 2 men in black suits stepped out. They carried no briefcases and spoke not a word to each other, but both wore discreet wireless earpieces in their right ears. The first, tall with silver hair, scanned the scene with eyes sharp as razors. The second, younger and vigilant, kept precisely to his side. They entered the DMV with neither haste nor hesitation. No one blocked their path. Their confident stride seemed to part the crowd. No badge was shown, no names spoken. They walked as if every door willingly opened for them. When the silver-haired man's gaze swept the room, it halted instantly upon Colonel Whitaker in the corner. He approached without delay and stopped a single step away. "Colonel Whitaker, sir," he said, his voice measured, authoritative. Respect resonated in each syllable, not mere deference to rank, but recognition of one who once bore great responsibility. "We have received your request for assistance." Whitaker looked up. That same deep, calm gaze remained, devoid of any excess reaction. "No action is required," he replied, his tone low and resonant, as if prepared long ago. "Simply remind them that I am still alive." No further explanation was needed. Within the office, Karen Sullivan's voice rang out, tense and insistent. "Top secret clearance. I don't know who authorized this. Direct authorization from National Security. I need verification. No one informed me." Her words echoed through the imperfectly soundproof glass, mingling with the shuffle of papers and chairs scraping the floor. No one in the reception area cared about their queue numbers anymore. One by one, people began to whisper. Some raised their phones, cameras poised. All eyes turned toward the colonel, who just minutes earlier had been the target of ridicule, now the focal point of a secret unfolding before them. No one knew precisely what was happening, yet everyone felt something significant stirring. The DMV, once emblematic of tedium and delay, had become the nexus of an event far beyond routine paperwork and waiting numbers. The room seemed to hold its breath. The entire system lay in silence, waiting for something, or someone, to bend its familiar order. The security door swung open with a soft yet decisive click. Every eye in the DMV lobby snapped to attention as Ryan Bennett, the young security officer who usually brimmed with confidence, stepped out. But today, that confidence was gone. His face was ashen, his gaze cast downward, avoiding every glance aimed his way. Shoulders that once stood proud now slumped. His steps lacked the firmness he'd shown when he confronted Whitaker minutes before. He seemed to lean forward, stiff with an invisible weight, each footfall slow and labored, as if reminding him of the mistake he'd just made, a mistake likely to follow him for life. Ryan stopped before Colonel James Whitaker. The room fell utterly silent, save for the hum of the air conditioner and the pale glow of fluorescent lights on the linoleum floor. "Sir," Ryan murmured, his voice stammering, swallowed by the shame coiling in his chest. I didn't know." Whitaker regarded him with eyes sharp as a worn blade, capable of cutting through arrogance, yet neither angry nor mocking. Rather the look of one who has seen more, lost more, and understands the cost of ignorance. "No," he replied, his tone low and steel cold. "You didn't know." No harsh words were needed. That truth alone was heavy enough to choke. At that moment, the silver-haired agent in the black suit, who had arrived with the government-plated SUV, stepped forward. He opened his slim leather portfolio and produced a stack of documents embossed with federal seals. No introduction, no preamble, only clear, concise action. "Emergency renewal authorization," he said, handing the papers to Whitaker, "with the Department of Defense's formal apology and immediate escort to the Priority Processing Center." The documents were presented with both hands, solemn and understanding. No fanfare, just a belated, yet necessary acknowledgement from a system that had forgotten him too long. Moments later, Karen Sullivan emerged from the hallway, regaining her usual professional composure, hair neatly pinned back, eyes in control, voice measured. Yet she could not hide a flicker of discomfort as she held the file and clenched her hands. "Colonel Whitaker," she began, striving for calm, "we have a private office in the back to handle your paperwork immediately." Her tone lacked the earlier pride. It carried hesitation, perhaps shame, perhaps fear. Whitaker did not reply at once. He glanced up at the digital display overhead, where the number 142 blinked in red. He then looked back at her, unperturbed. "I will wait my turn. My number is 151. A simple statement, yet it froze the DMV lobby for several heartbeats. Karen's eyes fluttered. Confusion spread across her face. "Sir, after everything that's happened," she began, but Whitaker cut in. "Just a misunderstanding," he said, his voice gentle but firm, leaving no room for pity. "I've endured far worse." For the first time since he arrived, Whitaker offered a faint smile, a dry sound, neither joyful nor triumphant, but the exhale of someone long silent. It carried bitterness, yet pride, the laugh of a survivor of storms of steel who stood at the front when others retreated. Those around him, who had laughed, who had doubted, fell silent. No one spoke. Some lowered their recording phones. Others rose, arms dropping, eyes bewildered, unsure where to look. In that moment, they did not see an old man with an expired card. They saw a man who had been where mistakes cost blood, where apologies cannot right wrongs, but only lives can. And thus, when Whitaker chose to return to the gray plastic bench and wait his turn like everyone else, it became his clearest declaration. Respect is not granted by privilege, but by dignity. And dignity, sometimes, shines most when one refuses special treatment. He returned to the plastic bench as if he had never left it, hands resting on his knees, his gaze fixed once more straight ahead. The same posture, the same silence. But this time, the quiet around him was different. The silence of reverence. For the next 47 minutes, Colonel James Whitaker remained seated in the same spot, the cold, hard plastic bench, just like any ordinary citizen waiting for his turn. No one was given priority, no one cut in line, and he made no demands. Even with two black-suited agents standing nearby, their eyes meticulously tracking every movement, he sat there, calm, silent, refusing to let his presence create any separation. The waiting room seemed to hold its breath with each passing minute. Some people stopped looking at their phones. Others sat still, watching him as a quiet gesture of respect. Then the number 151 appeared on the screen, blazing red and flashing for several seconds. Whitaker rose, neither hurried nor slow. He walked to window number 4, where a young clerk waited, face taut with tension, hands trembling slightly. This wasn't merely an administrative procedure for him anymore. It was a significant moment. He handed over his card and paperwork with precise formality. The process unfolded exactly to protocol, yet not a second passed without the clerk handling each document as if it were a national treasure. Beside them, the two agents stood in silence. They spoke no words, made no gestures, yet their presence imparted a different atmosphere to Window 4. The DMV, usually synonymous with bureaucratic tedium and endless waiting, had become a discreet chamber where ordinary routines could not proceed unobserved. When the process concluded and his renewed ID was returned, Whitaker carefully slipped it into his coat and turned to leave. But he paused, not to look around, but to step toward the security desk where Ryan Bennett still stood. Ryan froze, as though encased in ice. Every movement slowed. He dared not avert his gaze, nor face him directly. Whitaker stopped before him, keeping a respectful distance, and spoke softly. "Officer." Ryan's body jerked. Reflexively, he straightened his back. "Yes, sir," he whispered. Whitaker withdrew the newly issued card from his pocket and held it up to eye level. He did not speak further, allowing its quiet gleam under the fluorescent lights to speak for itself. "Next time you see this insignia," he said, his tone measured yet resonant, "stand at attention, or get out of the way." Those words needed no emphasis. They etched themselves deeply, not only into Ryan's heart, but into the memory of everyone present. At the exit, Whitaker paused once more. This time he turned back, his voice carrying through the hushed room. "The card you mocked was issued at Camp Perry in 1984. The signatures on it belong to men whose names don't appear in history books. Not because they were unimportant, but because they were too important to mention. I carried it through 3 conflicts you've never heard of, in 7 countries that don't even acknowledge my existence." No one moved. Not a sound escaped. The room froze. Every eye followed him. This man bearing unspeakable secrets and untold memories. Then, as he had always done, Whitaker adjusted his collar and stepped through the door in silence. Outside, the black SUV waited. The door closed, and it rolled away, swiftly, smoothly, without a sound, leaving no trace of its presence. Behind him, Ryan Bennett collapsed into a chair, face drained of color, eyes vacant. No one had to tell him. He knew perfectly well. This was not merely a professional mistake. It was the end of his career. A moment of arrogance had shattered everything he had worked to build. At window 6, Emily Harper stared quietly at her computer screen, her fingers hovering over the half-written Reddit post. No one needed to instruct her. She deleted it without hesitation. Not out of fear of being traced, but because she understood that some stories are not ours to tell, and some people should never be the butt of the internet's jokes,